For this episode of the CoCo Collector, I'm going to forego my normal format to talk about a project that I've been working on. It links multiple computers together. I call it Ghidorah. The name is a nod to the three-headed serpent, King Ghidorah, of the Godzilla movies in the 1960s and 1970s. Ghidorah is a single orbiter, multiple listener topology and protocol for passing information between computers that are linked together. In this case, I'm using 5 CoCo 3s. They are all connected via a special cable from one serial I/O port to the next, and a special ROM in each of the cartridge slots. This is the Ghidorah cable. It's composed of 5 4-pinned in connectors, where the TX line of each connector goes to the RX line of the next one, and so on. It forms a ring. Now, I have 5 of these connectors on here. You could put more if you wanted to. But I also have this 9-pin DIN connector that's going to connect to a Mac that's going to act as the arbiter. And I'll explain to you what an arbiter is shortly. These are terminators that you can use to terminate a specific port. So for instance, I can plug in this 4-pin DIN connector from the Ghidorah cable to here, and that will allow the TX and RX lines to bypass to the next port down the line. So if you only have, say, 3 or 4 CoCos that you want to use, but you have a 5-headed cable, you simply put the terminators on the unused connectors. I've connected the Ghidorah cable back up to these 5 CoCo 3s. There's CoCo 3 number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. And each of them have the red Ghidorah cartridge plugged into the side, the Ghidorah ROM that I created. These monitors here, the first 4 here, are going to correspond to the first 4 CoCo 3s, and this monitor will correspond to the 5th. I'll power everything on at once. That'll bring up the entire system. All 5 CoCo 3s power up at once, as well as the monitors, and as you can see on each of the monitors is the Ghidorah 1.0 sign-on message. I have my MacBook Pro here. I'm going to connect it to a USB to serial device that is going to in turn connect to the 9-pin DIN on the Ghidorah cable. And this MacBook Pro is going to act as an arbiter. So the arbiter is what is responsible for sending commands, and the CoCo 3s are the listeners. They are going to listen for commands that come from the arbiter, and I'll explain what those commands are and how we can use them. I have the Mac terminal screen superimposed on the video of the 5 monitors connected to the CoCos. I'm going to run a Python command called discover, and discover is a Ghidorah protocol command that goes out and finds how many listeners are on the Ghidorah cable. Each CoCo on the ring identifies itself with a D and a number. So there's D01, and then the next CoCo in line will be D02, all the way up to D05. So the arbiter knows, once the command returns to it, how many listeners happen to be on the particular ring. So there are 5 listeners in this case, D01 through D05. The next command I'm going to use is the load command, and I'm going to pass a number of parameters to it. I'm going to load a program called color bar. I'm specifying the load address and the execution address, and when I press enter, you'll notice that the program loads into each of the CoCos on the chain, and they execute that command. I'm going to do another command called CO, which is going to just draw a big O on CoCo number 3. You'll notice I put node X3, and now I'll do node X1, and I can specify which CoCo receives and executes the particular command. And that's a short introduction to the Ghidorah project. It's a simple way to connect multiple computers together via serial ports and load programs into either one or all of them at the same time. The neat thing about this project is that you don't have to use just a CoCo. Maybe you want to use an Atari 8-bit computer, or a Commodore 64 or VIC-20, or a PC. You can have as many listeners as you want physically on the cable. You just have to make sure that there's a client for that particular listener. There are a lot more technical details that I'm skimming over in this video, but I plan on writing a paper for the CoCo Call for Papers in 2021 that'll go into the specifics of the Ghidorah protocol and the project itself. Well, that about does it for this episode of the CoCo Collector. A little bit different, but something I wanted to share with the rest of you about what I'm working on. For the next episode, I'll get back to the normal fare of showing off one of my collection. In the meantime, I'm going to give this guy a thumbs up.